I'm Gene, and this is Perfect Flow. I'm a New Zealand-based athlete and coach focused on optimizing performance, health, and well-being. While I have a professional background in biomedical engineering, I've chosen to follow my more immediate passions for running, endurance, adventure, movement, nutrition, lifestyle, community, psychology, and personal growth. My goal in starting this podcast is to connect with bright minds to extract the information I need to live a life that makes sense and feels good, and share those conversations with others. Apart from your favorite podcast app, the best places to follow my work are perfectflow.nz, genebeveridge.nz, and Perfect Flow on Facebook. Hi, welcome back to Perfect Flow. I hope everyone is well and healthy. Hope you've had some good adventures recently, or you've been training with good friends. Today I'm speaking with Alisha Lovrich. She's a photographer and a pole vaulter. She's just on the way home from the Tokyo Olympics, and while she was in quarantine, she had some time to spare, and we have a talk about her introduction to photography and the kind of different styles that she works with. And then we talk a lot about pole vaulting, which I found really interesting. It's a sport that I've never done anything close to. So we delve a little deeper into pole vaulting than I've been before. And then we talk a lot about her photos at the Olympics and some other recent shoots that she's done. And we have a screen recording of all of this. So the last half where we're looking at the photos, definitely recommend that you see the video of that. But it's still good listening. And the first half is, you don't need the video for the first half. If you'd like to check out more of her work, I'd go to Alisha Lovrich Photography on Facebook or alishalovrich.com. She's got a lot of wonderful sports photography on there. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with photographer and pole vaulter Alisha Lovrich. Alisha, thanks for coming on Perfect Flow.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, this will be fun. I haven't talked to a photographer before, and I've always loved photography. But, well, yeah, the setting. So I'm keen to hear a bit about what photography means to you and also some of the recent stuff that you've done. But first, where are you at the moment?
So I'm currently in MIQ in Christchurch. So we flew in the 9th Tokyo time on a charter straight to Christchurch. So I'm on day 7. I'm at halfway, 7 days to go. So That's fantastic. And yeah.
Yeah, and where have you come from?
So I came from Tokyo for the Olympic Games, which was pretty sweet.
Yeah, so was that 2 weeks, probably about 2 weeks you spent over there?
I think.
Or longer?
I think 19 days.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
2 weeks in Tokyo for 2 weeks in quarantine. Probably worth it.
Yeah, literally. I'm pretty sure it's something. Yeah, I think it was like 19 days I was in Tokyo. I had my first 3 days were in quarantine. So with everything that was happening, the rules of what we're allowed to do were changing literally like the wind. So we had booked flights and accommodation, which is the biggest, like booking accommodation through their system is such a process. So it was so hard, it's like impossible to change once it was done. And as like that was confirmed quite a while ago, and then we got something saying, oh, you've got a 3-day quarantine, but you can still take photos. Like you can still do all your media activity. So we're thinking like that's not a quarantine, but okay. And then, when they announced there were no crowds.
Okay, that was a late announcement. Yeah, I wasn't quite so onto it.
real late announcement, and that's when they announced to everyone, like all of us, saying your 3-day quarantine is now a 3-day quarantine, like firm quarantine. And so all of us, like there was a flight when I run the 22nd, all of us going, okay, the ones who didn't get pre-approval to work from arrival, which was the biggest process. And none of us saw the point because we're like, well, we can still shoot, so we're not going to bother. And then when that came out, all the people who did go through that process to work on arrival, they could all do it. They could all shoot, but all of us that had clicked 3-day quarantine had to go in quarantine. So that was cool. So I arrived and had 3 days in quarantine. So 3 days to get my time zone right, which was pretty sweet. And then, back to work.
Cool. Not too bad, but
Just
yeah, it's a lot easier than what it would have been from New Zealand. Obviously, Japan was dealing with a bit of a virus resurgence at the time, so I'm not surprised they were changing the rules on the fly. Pretty tough situation for them.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, my clients were fine with that. Like, they kind of knew that was going to happen, and so, yeah. So, it was all good. We got through.
Cool. So, let's back things up a little bit. When did you first start playing with a camera?
I think, when was it? Maybe 2012. So, I had no interest in photography. Like, a lot of people will say, like, they had an interest in photography, started as a hobby, and then it grew from there. But I had more of a visual art background. So pretty much like these two pillars of my life is sport, and then there was art. And so when I did a Bachelor of Design at AUT, wanting to go more into a graphic design illustration path, but in first year of design school, photography is like a core paper. So the only reason I did photography is because I had to do it or I would have not progressed to year 2. So I reluctantly bought a camera, all that jazz, and I actually fell in love with it. So shout out to AUT for forcing me to do it.
Cool.
Yeah, and it just grew from there, like mainly just school stuff, stuff like, assignments and everything like that. But it was, I think, I was injured at like a national champs or something, and instead I took my camera to the track to take photos of my friends, and then I found like a love for athletics photography just through there. So if I didn't injure myself, maybe I wouldn't have.
Yeah. I was going to ask, did you realize that you wanted to combine sports and photography when you first started? It sounded like that came a little bit later.
Yeah, like I remember going into university thinking, because everything I'd done had been so sport focused, like I tried really hard through school when I was doing all my visual art. Like I did 2 visual art subjects, and I tried so hard to not go down a sport path. I failed in year 12 for design. I actually did. But I tried hard to just push outside my world, like push myself creativity, to go and do things that aren't sport focused. So my assignments in year 1 weren't sport. Like I purposely pushed away from that. But hey, I'm back.
Yeah,
I couldn't escape it. And that's my life, so.
Yeah. How would you describe photography a little bit for someone who can identify a camera, but there's a lot of different things going on in the photographer's head about what they're trying to do. And are there any broad categories you would draw between different photographers and the different styles?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So you've got your still life photographer, and that's, food, products, and that's doing a lot of stuff like on sets and stuff, and especially, and then you can get really complex with that, and there's a lot of work in that, as you can imagine. And then and that's a lot of studio-based stuff. So you've definitely got your still life guys, your studio-based guys. You've got your on location studio guy. That sounds different. That's someone who this is all pretty much in the commercial space, because I'm quite big in the commercial space as well. And that's someone who will come to set and it will be a lot going on. There'll be 10 lights, always an assistant, or one of my friends is a very talented fashion photographer, and that's their style, and they love the crafting of a scene, making it look like a film set. And then you also have your run and guns, and so I feel like I sit in between your run and gun. So your run and gun natural light photographer who strobes scare them and stuff. So those are strobes. When I say strobes, I mean lighting. And they kind of just want to work with what's there. And then you have your guy who has 10 lights that just loves lights. Mm-hmm. And I would put myself right in the middle of the two, because I actually love using lights, but I also love run and gun. So quite often for some types of shoots, I love working fast, which is perfect for sport. And it's perfect for working with athletes. I'm kind of popular when I work with professional athletes because I'm quick. I like to work quick. Some people plug into the computer and tether, and it's a slower process, but you can see what's happening. Mm. But I do like to keep things moving really quickly. and stuff, just because that's just like my mind goes like a million miles an hour, and it's way like on set, then you're less time and everything. But like I'll hire an assistant to hold my light so I don't need a stand. So I don't have to move the stand. I just move the person. You know what I mean? Like it's so, I'm like that, definitely there's that run and gun style. And then you've got like, I love working with people. Like I love it, meeting people, talking to people. But then you've got also photographers who don't really deal with people, and they're like the ones who like landscape kind of work, super patient. They have to be super patient, you know, multiple exposure, super creative stuff. Yeah. So there's a massive, and then you've got your real estate guys, your construction guys, like your wedding guys, the photography industry. There's so much variety, which is quite cool. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of us, but there's also a lot of different types of work. So it's kind of like,
when you see the finished product, what kind of photography draws your attention and appeal the most?
Ooh, I can definitely appreciate all photography. So that's quite, you know, we can all appreciate the elements of photography, composition, line, color, like all that. And so like obviously like being a sports like having a lot of my work in sport, I love seeing good sports photography. And so good sports photography is the actual event, and then like epic sports commercial photography. Like I love seeing that, and you can get super creative with that. But then like there's some like beautiful landscape works. I started to dabble into a bit of that post-COVID, had a bit of time in my hands. Now I have a print shop. My print shop was built because I was in lockdown and I was bored. And then stuff like that. And that has actually developed more work in the assignment-based stuff. So I guess like you can always appreciate good photos, and it just depends what you're into and it's kind of what draws your attention, I guess, which is quite cool. And yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it does sound like there's more to explore than I think people realize from the outside. Yeah, and I'm sure I wouldn't recognize a lot of what certain photographers are saying because they're so deep down their own path. Yeah, I can relate to some of the sports stuff a little bit, having done some competitive sport myself, and obviously landscapes, again, there's a relationship there, but then you can clearly see like I don't have a thing for wedding photography. It's just like it could be the greatest photo, and but there's not some emotional connection there to me. And there's some differences, and I really like geometry in photos as well. So there's something there that is present. I think when people, I don't know if they're looking, they're searching around throughout nature to try to find these coincidence of geometries or whatever, but I kind of like some of that stuff that almost it takes you a while to realize that it's actually a photo, not like a graphic artwork. I find some stuff like that quite cool.
Oh, it's amazing, some of the stuff that people are you're seeing from people. Some of the landscape work you see is insane, and I quite like, since I do like, it's interesting what you were saying with like the sport, like outside. Like, I do one style of image when it comes to sport is creating like a landscape art with like a person.
A little person.
With a little person
in this
or
big
like
setting.
Yeah, like especially if I'm doing like adventure sports or like photographing, maybe like trail running, mountain biking, like you've got this epic scene. Like sometimes you look at your subject and then your scene, and then you can create these, pieces with like this like little person or person with like epic, Yeah,
I can definitely relate to those.
Yeah, there we go.
That sounds good. And how did your career develop into this level of sports photography that you're doing now?
I get that a lot, and I don't really know. I think
bit by bit.
Yeah,
slowly.
Bit by bit. I mean, my biggest thing for me is just networking and contacts. And I think because I'm still an athlete, like I'm still a pole vaulter, not a very good one, but I'm in the world, and I never stopped doing athletics this whole time. Even though I was injured, I was still training, I was still there. And so because I never really left sport, that's helped me like massively grow in the sports industry. Like a lot of time I'll get work just because I know someone. Like someone knows someone. And high performance sport, as you probably know, is very small.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, like I get shared around sports quite a bit. So for example, I was meant to go to the Olympics as athletics, but the hockey photographer, Simon, he couldn't go to the Olympics this time. So he told me, hey, can you shoot this as well? And that's just totally just getting passed around. Mm-hmm. And like, I know I train a lot at the 82 Millennium, and there are so many sporting bodies there. It's a little bit of a joke because of how many different clients I have in the same building. And we all have the same cafe, which is funny when you're juggling two people's editing. And you're like, I hope I don't see both of you. But it is, like, I work for so many different, do work for 82 Millennium, but then so many different companies within that building just from being there. A lot of time it's just from being there. And yeah, like networking, meeting people, someone knows someone, and it just gradually grew. I started, just taking, when I was first starting, the little opportunities, maybe not paid as well, but it's an opportunity to get into another sport or to be seen in another light. And even just little things, like I actually have had a bit of work come from Sports Lab. Because I'll be sitting at the front talking, as you know. And so from there, I did get, like, I have a few clients now that have come directly from just me sitting there having a yarn at the desk.
That's so funny. Cool.
So how do you get your work? Talk.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting because it's so different from other people that are working in an office and like they've signed a contract and they're working for 5 years on the same thing and they know what's coming up.
Oh, totally.
It's totally
totally
opposite end of the spectrum. So before we get into having a look at some of your photos, can you tell me more about pole vault? Because pole vault is this one sport that I think pole vault and ski jumping are just so outrageous that I can't see the bridge to getting there. And I've had a look through some of your photos that you've sent through, and there's a few classics in there that you're just like, is this some surrealist image? Like, how does this happen? How does this person get into this position? And so, tell me a little bit about pole vault. Like, when does one start? Obviously, you start with a small pole and work your way up. But I've never seen any insight into this world, and I don't think many other people have.
Well, so pole vault is like, I can say I'm a pole vaulter, but it is kind of one of those stupid ones. You got to be a little crazy to do it. But when you first start, like it is like you don't want. It's one of those things. So when you have to run, like if you broke it right down, you have to run and reach top speed into an immovable object.
Yeah, sounds bad. Sounds risky.
On a bendy stick. And then, so you transfer your energy that's going this way into this way. And so, that's quite a, so that's like, in a nutshell, that is pole vault. And when you explain it like that, you go, that is kind of dumb. But when you start, you start on a straight pole. So the pole doesn't bend. That's fine.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then,
stiff pole.
Yeah, so you start on the straight pole, and all you do is you just you hold, like the way you hold off the ground is your height.
Right.
Like you're not actually holding any height.
How
and then
high
you just
are these intro
work on
poles?
Anything, to be honest, because they don't bend. You can grab any pole and hold it halfway down.
Oh,
and then you're just going like, if this is the pole, you're just going like this.
So how high are people jumping on a straight pole?
They're not even getting off the ground, pretty much.
Yeah, I could do
so
that.
you're pretty much, no, you could. Like no, actually, like you learn, because the hardest thing in pole vault is controlling the pole so it's behind your body. Because a lot of people, when they start, you have, say this is the pole, and then they'll end up going past the pole. And so you got to work on controlling the pole so it goes up and then down. And then eventually when you can do that, you hold higher and you step back further. And then eventually you're onto a point where you're jumping on a straight pole, but you're controlling it, but you're really high off the ground. And then you can just kind of like say, you can do like 4-step straight pole drills, which is what we do all the time. And it's so good for inversion drills. Is I maybe grip the pole 3 meters 40 off the ground, and you just like, it's straight, and so you just jump and you're straight. And straight pole there's no room for error when you're getting that high. Like there's not like a bend, you don't have your left arm to fix it, so it's a really good drill. And then people go upside down on it. So when you first start, you're not bending it, you're just going like this, and then eventually you hold higher and higher and higher to a point where you can master planting, taking off, and then even like swinging on a straight pole. You can do all that, land on your back. And then one day you pick up a soft pole and you bend it. And there's no real easy way to get into bending. Like all that stuff, that's fine. So you'll learn how to plant, you'll learn how to run, you'll learn how to take off, and suddenly your left hand's got to go into play. So you go on this, I don't know how long it is actually. It's quite small, but it's really soft pole. Okay. And then you work on just getting your left arm out.
Yeah, so explain the arms, because of course we're not paying close attention to the arms are when we're watching pole vault on TV.
True. Okay, so you got your top arm, which is so say I'm right-handed, that's my right hand, your top hand.
Okay.
Your top hand goes up past your head, eye.
Okay.
I'm trying to explain this, like really breaking it down. So that's your top hand is your life hand. That never lets go of the pole. So quite often though you'll see chalk or sticky spray, like black spray on the right hand. Yeah, so that's your right hand does maybe 80% of the work.
Okay.
And then your left hand is at the bottom, and your left hand just opens up the pole. And then the idea is your left hand's kind of like a lever, and you just got to keep it straight while you rotate while you move the pole forward and then swing on it. So ideally, when you take off, you want to use your left hand to move the pole like it's a bar, and then you swing on the bar.
Yeah, but the bar is exploding at the same time.
Yeah.
You're pushing, you're levering off the bar as it recoils.
Yeah,
and
pretty much.
I think that's the terrifying bit when you're watching it, is if they haven't got enough horizontal momentum, or maybe they don't jump at the right time. Yeah, then they're not going to get propelled upwards. They're getting propelled back onto the track. Which
we have all been rejected.
I'm sure, is that called a rejection?
It's called rejected.
That pretty much is a total rejection, and there is no squishing mat in that direction.
No,
I've noticed that, but I haven't seen anyone do a big blowout like that. At least my pole vault watching is probably once every 4 years, but I haven't seen any big blowouts like that. But sometimes you do see someone obviously not get the alignment right. And they kind of go up, and they're just nowhere near as high as they're supposed to be, and it's harder to tell for the watcher what exactly is going on, but they can obviously sense it quite early on. Because they pretty much just they don't even follow through. They're like, I don't have the right power. So what's kind of going on in those situations? Because they're still running just as fast.
Yeah. So if you have a spot on the runway that you've got to take off from, because that's the exact point. Like, it's just angles, right? So quite often if you see someone going straight up, most of the time it's because they've taken off too close. Okay. So if they take off too close, and also this happens, I'm like really bad at doing that, so my poor shoulders stood up. And that's also how you get rejected, is when, so if you get, you take off too close, then suddenly that angle of takeoff is like a bit out.
Pretty steep.
And so you're not, so maybe it's even like a foot close. And if you take off a foot close sometimes, or what often happens with this is you've got a gust of tailwind, and suddenly it's propelled you forward, but then if you're too forward, you're taking off too close and you get jammed. And so what that means is the takeoff's not free at all. You're trying to take off under the pole, and then you don't have the right forward momentum, that you just get stood up.
Okay. So you go up.
So you'll see athletes. Yeah. So I'm not sure if they show us on TV, but you probably will see athletes when that happens, is they'll stand in the box with their foot on the ground and put their arm up in the air with the pole and look at their coach, and then they'll start moving. And what they're doing is they're seeing where did they take off from and where should they be taking off.
Right.
And then when they figure that out, so they go, I was here, and then your shoulder's like so far back because you're way too under. And then they go, okay, I got to be 2 feet back. So then on the runway, they move their mark 2 feet back.
Right, but are there marks where they're taking their last step from, or they're measuring their marks from the first step and they just know the number of paces?
Yep,
right.
First step, and so
no
we
one's
count.
putting sticky tape, when they're launching. There's no markers up there.
No.
Yeah, okay.
So it's kind of, we all have runs. And so for a girl, 14, 16, 18 steps is common. World record holder Mondo Duplantis, I think he's on 22 steps. So we actually count. Yeah, so we count. So for example, you'll go, I quite like having my last phase at 6 steps. And so say if I'm doing 12 step, I'll count to 6. And that's kind of like just accelerating. And then I'll count another 6, and you chop those 6. And generally speaking, when you think 3 or 4, you start planting the pole.
Okay.
So it's like we actually count in our head. Americans count lefts, so they only count they count every second step, which kind of makes sense, actually, in a way. And then, so we count, and pretty much. And then there's all this other stuff that's going on. Like if you see athletes going too forward, their pole's too soft, so they go upper pole.
Okay.
So you might hear athletes saying like, I got to go up a pole, or you go up a grip as well, because obviously that if you want to land deeper in the pit, you hold down the pole, so you kind of go more that way. But if you want to go higher, you hold higher at the pole. But too far up the pole, you're going to go backwards because you're not going to have enough horizontal energy. And the other way is the pole's too stiff. Sometimes when you see people going straight up and straight down, that could also mean the pole's too stiff. So they don't have enough, like they've taken off at the right spot and everything, but they don't have enough forward momentum to match the energy of the pole. Yep. So think of poles as energy, and so your runway speed, your strength has to match the energy of the pole. And then if you match your energy, you go up. Whereas if you've got too much energy, you go forward, and not enough energy, you go backwards.
Yeah, it's like this intermediate energy storage. Like it starts off as kinetic energy when you're running, and then it goes into the elastic energy of the pole, and then that goes into the gravitational potential energy at the top. So you've got, that's interesting. You've kind of got to match those up, and if you have an excess or a deficit on any one of those, then I can see how then you're going too far forward or too far backwards.
Exactly. That's interesting.
That final movement in the pole vault, especially noticing it's like some of the medalists when they're really pushing close towards world records, and you see them getting a bigger pole. And some of them, are really reaching, and they've got that top arm is really extended towards the top. They don't have much room left on the pole. And
that's perfect.
How much of that push, because the pole's almost straight at that stage, so you probably are getting a bit of energy that's new into the system, just coming straight out of your arm. You're pushing straight down onto this. The pole's pretty much rigid at that point. How much of an effort is that push? Is it just like holding the momentum, or is there like a concerted push off the top of the pole? And they're pretty much upside down at this stage. It's just incredible.
There's definitely a push. I'm not good enough to have ever experienced that. So to get that position is you have to invert. It's rare. Like so that means, there's a little saying, if you can jump that far off higher than your hands, you're like an elite vaulter. Because when you swing, you invert, and when you're inverting, you also turning at the same time, and your goal is so when you're turning, ready for that push, you've timed it to when the pole pops. So ideally, you want to be completing your turn while the pole is still bent, so then obviously when it pops out, because there is stored energy in that pole, and that also comes from there's actually the saying is penetrate the box.
That's unfortunate.
That's actually the term. And what that means is you are pushing pressure on the pole while you're turning to keep that energy there. So then when you are ready to push off, you're also timing it. It's like, when you fling rubber bands across the room on your finger, and sometimes it just falls, and then sometimes it just absolutely sends.
Yeah.
It's the same.
So they're actually pushing, the pole isn't entirely straight when they're doing that last push. I kind of thought it was pretty much straight, and they're pushing on a rigid pole.
Almost.
But it's almost, it's just that final bit of energy, and they're just pushing back against that final release from the pole. Okay.
Some probably would be straight. The goal is to have a little bit left.
Okay.
Because then you can get that push off. But I'm wondering though, when you see them already have turned, it's straight at that point because they've already done the push.
Right. So they're probably just following through more. They've done the effort, which was the main part of the extension of the arm, and then they're just just kind of letting go and there's a bit of momentum left. Yeah, it's hard to tell when the effort is, when the force output is the highest. All you can see is
so hard for you guys.
Yeah.
Like, I can see everything through my camera. Yeah. But it's really hard. Actually, that's probably... So I was shooting pole vault before I started pole vault. So that, I think, really helped me accelerate through my progression. Because I don't have any of the attributes that you're meant to have as a pole vaulter. Like, I have no gymnastics ability, and if I had come from sprints and hurdles early on in my career, but I started going into distance running, so I started losing that. And I have a good reach, and I have a good, like, my grip height, so how high I hold on the pole was really high compared to how high I actually jump, because my air is useless. Like, I'm actually, like, the worst combination, but I picked it up real quick, and I think it is because that I have spent years, like, we have one of the best pole vaulters in the world, and so, like, I was able to see that up close through my lens for years, and so I could actually see some of those movements, and quite often my coach would explain something, I'm like, yeah, I've seen that, I've actually got a picture of that, you know what I mean? So, like, it's quite really hard for you guys to see what's happening.
Yeah, that's an interesting lesson just for learning sports as skills generally, just
yeah.
How much time we maybe spend doing a sport, but maybe not enough time just watching someone really proficient doing it. That's interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, let's take a look at some of the photos you've sent through.
Yeah, sweet. Hopefully it worked.
Yeah, got it up here. Just let me know which ones, mean something to you that maybe you want to tell a story about.
Well, I've got a good mix there. I kind of just went through my phone.
There's quite a lot. We're obviously not going to go through.
No, you don't have to.
One of them, there's
I'll
a huge
let you pick, actually. Anything that catches your eye. It's quite good having someone else pick. So you can just
we've
go
just
through
been talking about these pole vault ones, so we'll...
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if we can get this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, how annoying. So, about my computer breaking in isolation.
Yeah, so I mean, that just gives you a sense of scale, like the length of these poles. And so you were there watching this final. I was also watching this.
Yeah.
Which was pretty
good.
intense. Yeah. It was, and it, like, a very emotional finish as well. She was just bawling.
Yeah, it's like that though. I quite often not. It's knowing that the girls don't do another attempt once they've won. Because the thing is, like, if you're crying, you can't get on the runway, man. Like, I think she tried, but I was thinking, like, Katie, no way. Like, you're crying. You just won. You're Olympic champion. Like you jumped 490. Last Rio Olympics, the winning jump was 485. So that kind of gives you an idea. And it was super humid here as well. I wasn't at Rio, so I don't know. But fun fact, Katie's using chalk. The sticky spray doesn't work in this condition.
The condition being too hot, too humid?
Too humid. So, like, I don't know what people were doing to combat that, but when it's super humid, that sticky spray we all use, well, when I say we all use, a lot of the New Zealanders have converted, apart from, like, 2 of us. It doesn't work that well. So it's interesting. It was actually quite interesting to see. I mean, I think Holly Bradshaw, who got 3rd, I'm pretty sure she uses spray. I'm not sure, but that was a thing. Like, people had to figure out ways to combat the humidity with grip. Mm-hmm. So, little fun facts.
So the last thing you want is to have, like, sweat, just a thin layer of fluid on the palm of your hand as you're trying to push off. Yeah.
And that's not fun.
Yeah. Especially when you're at the top of one of these poles.
No. But I like these photos. This is what I call a panning image. So I set my shutter speed really low, so maybe a 20th of a second, and all I do is I time my movement with the vaulter. Mm-hmm. And so that's why
you're getting a blur in the background, but ideally the subject is clearer.
Yeah. Which is hard to do, but it's
and it shows you how fast they're moving as well.
Yeah, exactly. And also the background's filthy, so it's quite nice to kind of, the filthier the background, the better the pan, because you see so much moving around. So, but yeah, no, that pole's quite big.
Yeah.
I don't actually know the length. I was trying to think.
It's huge.
Yeah. There's bigger. So some of the girls jump on bigger ones than that. Like longer ones.
Yeah. I also found this just in the same vein as what I was saying earlier, just about how like pole vault is like an just unimaginable sport for someone who's never done it. Just like being that high off the ground and just so at home, like so acclimatized to that exact movement, including this 5-meter fall that you have to take each time. And it's just, to me, this photo just shows like a human totally at home, like out of context from the situation that we evolved in. I found that quite cool.
Yeah, this is probably one of my favorite photos of the games. Just as a vaulter, I know, not quite know, but that feeling is amazing. That's the winning height as well. That was 490. And she's very conveniently in front of the Tokyo 2020 branding. So it's just like, and I didn't go too close in. Like, I could have cropped more, but I quite like the space. Because as you said, it is just this whole new world. And I tell you what, falling, like, my PB is only 350, but it's high enough to know what you're doing. And it's high enough to have time when you fall. So I'm just imagining jumping almost a meter and a half higher. Is that time to fall is just like an unreal feeling.
Yeah. Those are, at some stage in your life when you're young, you get convinced to jump off a cliff at some stage into like a river or something. And that's something you notice for the first time. Is like, whoa, I'm still falling. I can say I'm still falling. And like, that's just routine for these guys.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. It's like the big cliffs and you're like, ooh.
Yeah.
I can think about classic New Zealand things.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, there's some double ups there because I wasn't sure what my phone was up to. Oh yeah.
Brewer.
Yeah, with the sulfur flats. So pretty cool spot. Pretty average weather, but it's alright. We kind of drew more attention to the green ground, to the green kind of. I think that's part of it's like the edges of the lake.
Yeah,
that's bordering like the sulfur flats or something.
Yeah, combined with all the sulfury stuff, creating that briny fluid.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like it's kind of magical New Zealand. Oh, another picture. It's like magical New Zealand and stuff, and that's like the one. Yeah, these ones here, a lot of fern, a lot of greenery. I quite like these type of things, and I mean, I guess this would probably like speak to you as well. Just being like lost in the bush, lost in the world. Like it's it's quite nice and.
Yeah. I definitely appreciate those photos that not only show the subject but really show the context as the main feature, and I think that communicates at least what my experience of a lot of these longer trail races are. You have moments when your awareness is a lot more about this like wider world you're in, this wider environment, as opposed to like just the immediate road ahead.
Yeah, that's neat. That's actually really good to hear from you. And next time when I photograph a race like that, thinking about that.
I think that's the experience of a lot of the.
Sweet.
A lot of the runners.
I'll bank that. It's been a while since I ran that much, so it's quite nice to hear what you guys like experience and stuff when you run, especially because that's like those images there I'm marketing to people like yourself, so and stuff. Oh yeah, another sport, kiteboarding.
Yeah, again another like pretty outrageous and new sport, but I mean to me the photo just like it leaves you wondering like in what context that the human, like how did the human get themselves into this situation, both skill wise and also just energetics wise.
Oh, it's so like actually I take that back. I say pole vault's dumb. This is probably dumber.
This is dumb. I've never seen it.
His girlfriend's a pole vaulter too, so it's even funnier. But it's like kiteboarding. So this is Lucas Walton Climb. He's our top kite foiler actually. This was years ago when he does more freestyle. So he doesn't really do this anymore. He does more foiling. But this like freestyle kiting is just insane. Like you just pick up gusts of wind and I don't know, do this. But he's amazing. Like I told him to jump there, and then he can on cue go in the spot I asked. Like he's so good at navigating the space. Like it's the same similar skills of a gymnast. Is if I say jump here, he goes there.
Yeah, but it's like gymnast plus sailing, because you've also got to, the wind is your source of energy, and without it you can't do any of the the skillful things. But with too much of it, you're just a ragdoll.
Yeah, oh totally. And I think because like kite foiling is classified as sailing as well, and that's probably why. Because it is like there's a lot of sailing elements to it. But yeah, I quite like it because it's just like a human in space. Like that's what I was telling you about with the landscape images and then like human. This is kind of the vibe with kiting. Obviously this is sky, but it's quite fun. Oh yes, hello.
Yeah, I just love this pole vault theme. I mean,
that's a nice
this is what you expect
you
every time when I see these poles go. Like, I'm surprised this doesn't happen every time.
That's really rare. It's actually I think another image here I cropped it, but this is rare. So this is the only pole Eliza's broken. I happen to be there, and you can only shoot it from this angle. Like this angle is pretty much the best angle, and you have to be shooting the whole takeoff to get it. It was just fluke.
Why is that? Because you don't know when it's going to break, and if you're not already shooting that, then you're never going to capture it. Yeah,
pretty much. And I was shooting this at a camera that was 10 frames a second. The before frame
fast.
It's pretty fast.
Yep.
Yeah, some cameras can do 20 now, but the before frame and the after frame, there's nothing. Like the after frame, the pole, like the pieces are just like and so. For this photo,
so the frame before this, the pole's bent, like severely bent, but as expected.
Yeah.
Like, right, and the frame afterwards, the pieces are not connected. Whereas this is still like just touching, but...
Just touching. Like a flukest photo of my life. So you're photographing the whole takeoff sequence, which I love the takeoff, photographing that, and I tend to do takeoff images in the warm-up because it looks like the comp, like you can't tell. Photographing the whole sequence. I'm actually really close. Like I'm on a wide angle lens. So when this happened and the noise the pole makes when it breaks, nice little bit of rhyming there, is just this massive bang. And I'm sitting right there and it's, oh wow.
Yeah, well that's all that energy we mentioned beforehand. It's all the energy from the run up turns into the elastic energy, and then it all turns into the sound. What's left of it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so does she end
lucky.
up landing on the mat? She's still got enough horizontal momentum that she will land on the mat as opposed to just dropping straight down into that pit, which would...
Yes. Yeah, actually, thank you. You're like the first person who's not a pole vaulter who said to me she's going to have enough horizontal energy to land on the mat. Everyone thinks she's just going to drop.
Right.
But if you think you're running into like something with a pole and you're putting that energy into, you're matching that pole's energy to go up, but if that energy disappears then you're just going to go.
Yeah.
Which is what happened. She just went on the mat and stuff, and
cool. So what triggers a break like this? Is this wear and tear or a defect? Ooh. Like surely they're not pushing that close to like the limit of the strength of the pole.
That we don't know. So we think that was a defect. We think maybe so sometimes if the pole nicks the upright or like something, you can't really tell when a pole's damaged. That's the only problem. So we think it was damaged. Also looking where the pole's breaking, the weakest point of the pole is where it bends, and it's right in the middle of the black bit, and it hasn't broken there, and it's broken higher. So we do think that it was damaged higher. Like poles aren't meant to break, and so fun fact, each pole has a weight rating. So there's a number on the top of the pole in pounds, and that's pretty much the maximum weight that you can be as a person while holding the pole maybe a hand from the top. But the thing is, so in America, actually, in some states, they actually weigh the athletes in high school to make sure they're on poles that aren't too small for them. But in saying that, you're never going to be on a pole. Like, if you vault efficiently, you're never going to be a pole anywhere near your weight.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think, so I'm 58 kilos. What's that? Is it double in pounds?
Yeah, about close.
So it would be like
120.
Oh my God, maths.
120 pounds.
Yeah, let's round out 120. 120 pounds. If I jumped on 120 pound pole and held at the top, I'd break it. Like, if I'm holding at the top of the pole, I'm pretty sure I'm on like a 150. So
Right.
it's like quite hard. Like, you would never jump that low. So that's like one main thing. And then another thing, this is not in this case, is technique. Like, sometimes, like, the way you use your left hand can trigger some breaks in the pole. Like, it puts a bit too much stress on it, especially these poles. So these are carbon composite poles. Carbon composite, I think. Like, it's a blend of carbon fibre and fiberglass, whereas a lot of athletes jump on fiberglass poles. Tomato, whatever works for you. So, like, Eliza is actually on some of the biggest poles out of all the girls in the world. So, you know how I said before, like, Katie's poles, that was the American bowls we saw, has, like, there are girls with bigger poles in her. Yeah, Eliza's one of them.
Okay.
And so I think with the carbon, it's lighter as well, so she can, like, carry a much larger pole and not have the weight.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, we don't, like... Poles breaking is kind of the last thing we think of in a jump, because it's like the last thing that can go wrong. Like, there's a million other things that could go wrong first before your pole breaks.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because as someone who's never done it, it looks like it's the thing that's going to happen every time.
Yeah. No. If you look after your poles and stuff, no. So, like, ideally you don't, like, not many athletes break poles. Mm-hmm. They break like one or two. I mean, some athletes might break like 5, but that's in their whole career.
Yeah, obviously I'm not the most experienced with team sports, but you said you were also doing hockey?
Yeah, so I have
games?
no experience with team sports either. Like, I'm mainly in athletics, or like most of the time I'm shooting sports stuff. It's like for like marketing purposes and stuff. The only time I'll be at an event is mainly athletics. But yeah, I was shooting the hockey. I think I shot maybe a handful of times, like a few years ago. And when Simon said, hey, can you cover, I went to a game in Hamilton as a warm-up, because I really didn't want, the first time in like 4 years, to shoot hockey at the Olympics. I was like, let's warm up. Again, that's that athlete mentality coming in, is I have like, I need a bit of a warm-up before I go. And so I went and shot that. But field hockey's awesome. Like, it's actually so cool. And, like, see this? You've got, like, all the spray from the turf. It's because they wet the turf before they play. And I think it's so the ball moves faster. And so you get all this cool stuff.
Yeah, some cool layers there. But also just, like, the concentration and trying to communicate that to the viewer, I think is really cool. Just that, you know, alignment of concentration and movement.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think when I went and shot hockey, I didn't shoot it from a hockey expert, because I'm not. So I shot it from an athlete's viewpoint. Like, I try to just, okay, one thing I do have is I'm an athlete, I know how to read sport. And so I can react and anticipate sport just from doing it. Like, we all would be able to do it. And so that's how I shot the hockey, and that's the approach I went, is to try to get pretty much what you said. So, yay, it worked. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, though, when you have different photographers and what they focus on. And so that was kind of like, I'm going to try focus on that when I'm shooting the hockey. But it is great. It's so hard to shoot, though, because especially the girls. So the girls move so fast. I think because the boys, the boys will go back and hold the ball. Like, they're not afraid, they can hold the ball, and they will, like, kind of do some tricks and stuff, and then go forward, whereas the girls are going forward every time. Like, sometimes they'll go back, but they're mostly going forward. And so it's just, like, it's so quick. And then, of course, you're not moving in a straight line. You know, the ball's just getting, like, pinged all over the place. So it's quite hectic, but it's quite fun, actually. Mm-hmm. Like, I enjoyed it. this is in Hawke's Bay. This is Kelsey Berryman. I think this might have been shot the same day as that other pole snap. But oh yeah, her hand's like behind her slightly. What I like about this is she's my friend. I was jokingly saying to her, I want to get you jumping over the stadium. But what I like about this is because this is at like 4 or 5 p.m. and the light is just beams through the stadium at Hawke's Bay. It's actually a beautiful place to shoot. And so you're getting these really harsh highlights. And when you're shooting like this, you want to expose for your highlights. And so what this means, you can see it's highlighting her really, really nicely. And then everything else is like really dark, making her kind of like stand out. And then she's like conveniently in the space. And yeah, kind of like makes her look like she's long jumping very, very far.
Yeah, it's certainly visually very catching. Just the gradients and those abrupt contrasts is really nice.
Yeah, and the beautiful blue sky. Like, so a lot of the stuff is you get treated to what's given to you, and it's kind of how you're going to use it in a way. That's what I love about shooting here is these really harsh highlights. It makes it hard though because you got a lot of shadows you got to deal with as well, but it's so enjoyable shooting this with like this like nice harsh highlight. I think the last time I went down beginning of this year, it was overcast, and I was like, oh.
Jump through a few here.
Oh yeah, nice. Oh yeah, so this image here. So one of my friends who actually was in Tokyo, he launched a magazine called Long Distance, which he did during COVID, and the first issue was pretty much just running during COVID in an empty time. And so yeah, this was level 3 we shot this in. That's Eliza McCartney, and yeah, and I quite like this. Like, she lives here, so that was really nice, kind of spotlight closer to home. And it's so like the light is so beautiful up on that's like North Head, and the light, you can see it coming from the left, and it's just this nice golden glow, and it's hitting her like quite harshly, so she's like highlighted, like a little bit of like a glow on the outside of her, and so she's like kind of lost, but you can kind of see her. And so yeah, like I do like a nice golden hour shoot. I saw a lot of people do.
It's funny with anyone who's playing around with a phone camera, or even just pretty much any camera prior to 10 years ago, the kind of cameras that like we would buy from an electronics store anyway, is like you just couldn't shoot into the sun. Oh no, you just get washed out way too quickly. It's still really hard to capture that range. But then obviously you see the professionals who actually have the kit, have the gear, and they're shooting into the sun a lot, and it's pretty beautiful actually getting that intensity and those different colors pulled into different environment, just a little bit surreal.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say. Like, it is still hard to shoot into the sun because your autofocus jumps. Luckily I had something to grab. You want something to grab onto, but there's a few shots I have that I quite like, and the subject is entering like the sun, and so sometimes I'll actually manual focus that because you can't, like, it jumps because it's like your camera is like, excuse me.
Yeah, I think you do want the manual because you can push more into the saturation. If that's what you're after, then that's okay, as opposed to the camera trying to decide that it doesn't want to saturate. Yeah, or even like it can't see the thing because it can't see because you're shooting in the sun. Like, there's a lot of that as well. They're getting better though. Cameras are definitely getting better. Oh yeah, hello. Yeah. Classic shot. Also, there's so there's a little like unwritten rule. There's a kind of written rule in editorial work that you can't really Photoshop stuff out. And so I've got like, old mate, a photographer at the top of the frame ruining it. And my Instagram, I Photoshopped it out because I was like, screw it. But but what about cropping? Like, you're allowed to change the size of the image? Like, or is that also part of... But yeah, so explain that a bit further. So I can crop it. That is just like, I like that aspect ratio. But yeah, so there is, for editorial work as well, you don't want to be like photoshopping stuff like that. So it's a lot of the time like international press photography,
I don't really shoot for press, to be honest, so I could Photoshop it out, but it's just like, like journalism, it is keeping things real. There's like, because come on, we could Photoshop anything. Like, I've done some pretty criminal stuff, like kind of you deleting a person out of a frame because they no longer work at a workplace, like kind of stuff like that. So it is really, you can do a lot. So there's like a little bit of like an understanding among press photographers that don't do that. Like, it's what's there.
Yeah.
And so but I could crop down. Yeah, that's fine. But I like actually this photo. So there is like, it's so cool because the rings are painted on the track. And it's just like a classic, iconic. This was also the heats of the Women's 100. But to get here, I had to climb all the way up to the top of the stadium. And then you're shooting down, which is a little bit like heebie-jeebies. Yeah, I think I'm on a 300. I'm not quite sure, but I don't know what I shot that with, actually. But yeah, like, you're kind of like looking down, like you've got like, you're standing up on the seats. I think maybe I was sitting, but it's a nice sense of context. Mm-hmm. It's quite nice in photos to have a little bit of context. You've got your rings, you've got your Tokyo 2020 name, and it's nice and clean.
Yeah.
To like.
Yeah, as someone who likes movement and doing running as well and putting kind of effort into running mechanics, is these photos are just a great documentation of the different movements. If you just get one photo, then you obviously see them at one position in the gait cycle. But now that we've got 8 subjects, you can see them all at a different phase, exactly who's pushing and who's striding.
I never thought of that.
You could teach.
That's actually a really good point.
You could teach a whole class on stride mechanics, possibly from this one photo. There's someone in pretty much every stage
how cool.
of the movement.
That's so funny. I didn't even notice it, but now you mention it, I was like, look at that. Oh, yes. Oh, Val.
So did you focus on following the New Zealanders? I guess that's what had been asked of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you followed most of our big moments.
Yeah. So that was literally top priority of my whole games was the New Zealand athletics team. So hockey came second, and they knew that like athletics comes first, and if you've got a game, I actually missed a few games because I missed the hockey game because I was here, and so my top priority was athletics, and so I follow the athletes around, which is really cool because I get an opportunity to shoot stuff like this. Like, I really like this type of photo as an athlete. I think you might be the same. Like, it really shows the concentration. It's kind of getting ready in the zone. You see a little bit of chalk spray on her arm and just kind of,
She looks a little vulnerable to me as well, which I think is also an important thing to communicate. Like, there is always this chance of error, and there's always the feeling that you do everything you can and it's still not good enough. I think there's just a bit of concern coming from Valerie there, which is, I think really important to communicate as well. That the TV cameras focus a lot on those people who are winning and those who are doing well, because that's the selection pressure that these races put on people. You're always focusing on the winners, but there's a lot of other experiences going on with the rest of the field. You didn't get anything of the marathon. That wasn't one you were following, either the men's or women's marathon.
Oh, because it was like brutal. A 3-hour flight north.
There was very little happy people to photograph in that. Yeah, that's right. It was run in a different city. Yeah. Things like that, I think, really complete the picture. I don't know if you want to communicate that sport is just all about victory, because I think for most of the time it's not meeting your expectations. That's happening just as often as meeting your expectations.
Especially the marathon, that was brutal.
So brutal.
Absolutely brutal. Oh my goodness me.
But this
would have been nice to get there and just show. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, that was one of the most exciting things I've ever seen. I was absolutely fizzing after this night. So there's Elaine Thompson here. On her left is Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price. Shelly-Ann was the favourite. She was world number 2 all time. with the rainbow hair.
Mm-hmm.
And then Elaine just out of the park. And the thing is, though, they're all really close in times during the year. So 100 metres is like, there's nothing in it, really. And then it's all about your start. Like, do you have good start, good form, all this. And so this race was insane, because then this race became the second fastest time of all time. And it's an Olympic record. So that was pretty awesome. I got to see that in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And they're right next to each other, and I'm shooting. So a lot of I'm gonna let out a secret now on your podcast.
Cool.
But a lot of people, when they're shooting the 100-meter sprints, is they'll go straight on, right? And they go straight on with a 400 mil. I go halfway around the bend on a wider lens, and the reason I do that is because when they cross the line, it takes a few steps for them to realize they've won.
Mm-hmm.
And so, or maybe sometimes if it's like ages in front, you can tell, but the full celebration happens around the bend, and if they're sprinting, they're going to sprint past you. And so I got all these because of where I was sitting. Like, I was like, maybe, like, I'm shooting across the track rather than straight on the middle. And that's how I get this.
Yep. And so, I guess they're getting guided round by the lines a little bit as well. Not that they have to stand the lines or anything, but I think naturally, well, especially those on the outside lanes, they're running out of track, so everyone's curving around towards you.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
exactly. And you get these absolutely incredible moments. Like, this race was insane, and it's so cool. And it was the first night, so during this race, I don't know if you guys saw it on TV, but they cut the lights. So in Doha, before a lot of sprint finals for World Champs 2019, they tested this thing where they cut the lights and they did a light show. And then for Tokyo, they only did it for the 100-meter finals. And
they
so
were
this
using
was the
big
first
projectors
one,
by the looks of it. Did they have some big projectors up on the
I think
on the roof or something?
I'm not sure, because we couldn't see them. So I don't know, but it's being there is such a shame that there was no crowd, because being there, it is actually pretty cool, because they dim the lights a bit to start with, and then they cut the lights, which is like quite a thing, like a surreal thing when you're in a stadium and it just goes black, and then they just suddenly like light up certain things and have this whole spectacle right before the race, which is cool. I think they should keep doing that. It's such a cool thing. It makes it like a show more than like a sport, which is like, it is like the 100
meters. And they had some music as well.
Yeah,
it was pretty.
It's
pretty intense. It's a bit of a gladiator festival. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah,
I liked it.
Exactly, and that's quite cool because it does take it back to like the original times. Like athletics was the OG sport.
Yeah,
and it is a show. Like it's like a show, and so I think, and it's so cool when you see that, and then they're there, and then they're ready to run, and you've got 10.6 seconds.
Outrageous, eh?
And so you actually have 5 seconds, if that, because you're not going to get the first half of the race. Oh, actually, I'll take that back. I feel like you've got 4 seconds to pick a winner when you're shooting this type of shot, because everyone's really close.
Oh, right. So you can only see. Yeah. You can only get a good gauge when they're reasonably close to you. And then you've got to focus in on them. You're not taking such a wide shot that you can then crop later.
And then you can even see my focus is on her, not on Shelly-Ann. Like there's a dot on your camera, and you literally pick who you're focusing on. Like if you let the camera do its thing, it's going to pick anyone. So you have 4 seconds to figure out who won. But sometimes you can tell, like they can tell, and then if you're shooting the wrong person at the line and you hear someone, you just move. But it's quite like there's a lot of this photo. Some interesting things I was playing with. I went up a bit higher to try to get something clean. And what's quite cool with this photo is you can actually see the different, like if you look at everyone's foot, you can almost like see like reaction times and stuff.
Yeah, this
was fun.
That's interesting. There's 2 groups of reaction times there. 6 are very close and the other 3 are very close.
Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. What does black and white do for you?
Sometimes I just go black and white if the colours are ugly.
Okay.
And then what that takes away the colour and it just looks at form and shape, which is quite cool. And so especially something like this, like the colour image is actually just average. And it took a while for me to, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of like it. And I posted this amongst some others and arty stuff from above, and this one did really well on my social media, which is interesting. And then when I look at it again, I'm like, actually, it is quite nice. But yeah, black and white for me, especially because tracks are red and the line's white. So it does provide a really good contrast.
Yeah,
stuff.
you've also
but
got...
It does, yeah.
Yeah, most of them, you've got black skin over white singlet, and then that's all providing the contrast there as white. You've got the white legs with black shorts. So there is just naturally enough contrast in this shot. But I imagine if like the setup isn't right, you flick something to black and white and it just all goes grey. That's my guess.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not
totally.
experienced, but yeah.
No, totally. I mean, there's some things you can play with. But no, totally 100%. And so a lot of time for me, black and white, it depends, like distracting colour. Like that's that whole colour theory thing coming into play. Like if it's distracting, I'm going to, like I don't want a bit of that distraction, I'll flick it to black and white. A lot of time for clients though, I won't. Or I will do 2 edits. So a lot of time, like my teams and stuff do want colour images. And so if that's the case, I edit 2 copies.
Just look at a few more.
Oh,
yeah, and
that's one of my favourites.
yeah. So I mean, they're not doing their thing in terms of doing the sport. It's just really the kind of the energy and emotion that you're trying to capture on this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so convenient. I mean, they're literally in front, like it's such a clean background. You've got Tokyo 2020 on the left, you've got the rings on the right, you've got the rings behind Rose, and yeah, and it's just cool because I had to make because I was focusing on Rose because Kelsey took the ball, Kelsey Smith took the ball all the way down, and then Rose was open and she flicked it back to Rose and Rose took a shot, and this is when you gotta know sport. So I actually shoot, I don't close my left eye when I shoot. So you got your camera on your right, I sometimes close it, but I actually leave it open. And the reason I do that is so I can see what's happening around me, because I'm like quite zoomed in on my left. And so when she took this shot, some people might follow the ball, but I was like, don't follow the ball because that's going in, and obviously like she's going to celebrate. And so it's kind of one of those things where I did remember, it was so funny though, because when I took this shot, I think we were down, and so this was an equaliser, and I said in my mouth oh yeah, Rose, hero. The mic's right here, the mic's literally next to my face, and I'm just so glad I didn't actually activate my voice box while I was shooting, because you would have heard it, everyone would have heard it, and people who don't know me would have said, oh yeah, that's just the crowd, that's just one of her teammates. People who knew me would go straight away, that's Alisha.
Famous accidentally.
And it would have been so loud. And I know the mics are really directional though, so that might have saved me because I wasn't in front of the mic, but oh man. So that was quite funny. But yeah, I love this photo. I love the emotion as well with all the girls, and it's one of my favourites.
Yeah, me too. That's cool. A few more there. Of course, we all love Nick Willis.
Good old Nick, bloody legend.
Yeah, legend at it again.
Yeah, far out, isn't it? It's just awesome what he's done. He's so good for our sport. Not only he's shown longevity, but he's actually just such a lad.
Yeah.
When he's at events and stuff, he's cheering all the young guys on. He kind of takes them under his wing, and especially with Sam Tanner, I think he joked on Twitter. Saying oh, can I get some time off work? I've got to babysit Sam at an event in August, and so I think it's so cool, and he's really paving the way for distance running and middle distance running in New Zealand. So yeah, and stuff, and it was awesome to see him go through to another semi-final. I think he ran the fastest in the semi, or was it the heat, that he's done for 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
So I think it's great. He's a bloody legend, eh?
Yeah.
So good.
I want to ask you about this one because this was a very cool final. to watch.
Yeah.
And
So
when
cool.
you're working, I mean, obviously it's a treat to just be present at these events. How much of the experience are you losing because you're focusing on something that you're trying to line up, reposition, and you've just like missed a crucial moment that the rest of us on TV are bound to get two replays of, and you've missed it. You've missed your one chance because you were, busy repositioning. How's your experience at these events affected by the fact you're there to do a job?
Yeah, I think for this event as well, I actually went back to edit these pictures, and then I came back out. And so already I've missed a whole bunch. But I came back with a good time. I was actually shooting somewhere else for that because it's actually really hard to get into the spot. This is a pretty primo spot. It's like right behind the athletes and everyone wants it. But also it is right in shot for TV. So I was on TV so much in this event. And so I want to move. But it's interesting you say that because some people, you do miss a lot. But I get really sucked in to the event I'm shooting. Like, really sucked in. Like, I kind of... Like, even, like, that other photo that I was, like, I almost said something because I was so sucked into the game. I think... So I do, like, it's almost, like, the opposite. Like, I see more than what you guys see on TV because you're only focusing on what the camera can see, but I can see everything. And so, like, that whole thing, like, I don't shoot just through the barrel. I keep one eye open. And so... But I also feel it. I think that's a massive difference is when you're right in there with the athletes is you can feel it as well as see it. And so it's like I probably miss some things. Like I definitely miss some things, like replays and stuff like that. But in terms of like the emotional side of it, like I'm right there. And I probably feel more being there than I would on TV, which is quite cool. And then, cool. But I like this photo because you can kind of, it's just real convenient because his feet's off the ground, he's got the mat, branding, and then the bar's there. And then you can really get a sense of how high these guys actually jump.
Yeah.
Big hops.
Yeah, pretty unbelievable. Just one more again.
Oh, your Graves.
Yeah, just thought it was a nice photo. Just the high contrast again, shooting into the sun.
Yeah, I quite like these. It's the same with the one of Val, like kind of the getting ready, you know. Cam actually he won. This is before the half, and I think he broke the course record as well. So that's really awesome. That's the Auckland Marathon.
Okay.
So nice. I'm back covering that this year as well. My brief for Auckland Marathon is quite different to what a lot of people think it would be. So when I shoot for the Auckland Marathon, like my brief is to show off my city, pretty much. Like I'm there to show off the world, like kind of the same, like just for runners. I'm trying to attract people to run in this beautiful place. Like you can see all these beautiful scenes and it's just like fun, like the vibes, the scenery. So it's kind of like I'm just there to show off the marathon.
It's quite a diverse course, kind of so that's going to be fun. There's a lot of different environments to go, especially with the bridge.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. And like the bridge shot, you really want to, one year, I'm going to get no clouds.
Yeah.
Because I have done it a few years, and last year I did get a bit of sun coming through, but you've got a lot of weather, but it's so cool, and there's so many different awesome spots, and the shot really depends on the weather. Are you going to get sun or you're not going to get sun? So you kind of just play it by ear. Born and bred Aucklander, so I know all the roads. So it's kind of like, it's great. And then I'm on the back of a motorbike, actually.
Cool.
So I just sit on the back and I just cruise. I don't have to go fast because I'm just shooting. I don't have to chase people at all. But there is a time, like, so they go up Vauxhall Road and Lake Road is like a direct line. And so sometimes I'll shoot a bit on Vauxhall and then I'll cut across onto Lake Road and then just like go up Lake Road. And it's so funny because people definitely are looking like, that girl's got a great job. And I'm just sitting out back like, yeah. Like enjoying the ride, and it's great. Like, so that's a fun job. That's a really fun shoot.
Yeah. And
I'm nice and small, so the riders love me because it makes a hell of a difference. But I think I was annoying Cam then. That's why he's laughing at me.
This is the one I wanted to leave till last because I thought it was.
Oh yes.
Like this is my favorite out of everything in there.
Tom starting hurdles.
Yeah, I just thought that was fantastic. But you've got this like massive photographers in there as well. I think there's this second story going on here that you're actually photographing this bunch of all identical looking, in their little white hats down there.
I know.
There's like two layers to the story here.
Yeah, exactly.
No, don't. It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I was just lucky. I think it's so true. Like, you just see these sea of people, and it almost makes him look like, what do you reckon? Like, it makes it look like he's jumping higher?
Yeah,
like he's jumping over them?
It looks like he's going to land on them, and they're doomed.
Yeah. It's just funny.
Yeah,
like,
it's honestly got everything. Like, you've got this great contrast to like the main subject and the second subject, but just like this lad is just levitating despite the fact
this big lad as well.
He's a strong guy, and then it's also got the emotion. Like he's pumped with his put, and I thought this is great.
I love it too.
Yeah,
it's great.
So it sounds like you had a great time.
Oh yeah. Oh, getting stuff like this. Like, this is great. This is you gotta just be there for the moments, like kind of like ready to react. Last throw, and how, I'm not sure if you know, or listeners might not know, so how field events work, like if you're going for distance, not height, so like long jump, triple jump, shot put, hammer, they your first 3 rounds sorts out your order. So after 3 rounds, so you have 6 rounds, so after the first 3 rounds there's a break and your order is changed. Your top 8 remain and everyone else, so a final's got 12 people, they go, and your 8 remain, and the order is based on how you did in the first 3 throws. So for example, your 8th place throws first, and then the winner throws last. So in the last round, you already know where everyone's been. And so for example, round 4, the round 4 didn't throw, like 4th place, 5th round, 4th place, didn't throw further than Tom did. So he knew he had a medal, and this happened with Val as well, and then it's just like, but you still got to stay composed because you can upgrade. And that last round, like, you got a chance to upgrade. And this shot here, you've done the shot, and it doesn't matter where you've got your medal. So this reaction is most probably reacting to the fact that he's got a medal, or actually he did a really good throw in this round, and it could have also been him reacting like, I think he's upgraded.
Yeah.
But it's cool. So it's like your last round, you know that you're going to get this, and then you're also going to get, especially if that in the medals, you're also going to get coach who's sitting behind me. This is the thing, I know my sport so well that I know where to position myself, all these things. I've also got pink tape on my gear, so he did spot me, and that's why I have it, so they can spot me for like flag shots and emotional shots. But he's going to celebrate. He's also going to run out to his coach who's behind me, and then I'm going to get all of that. Just because I like pre-read the situation, and I'm like, that's going to happen, and then he's going to get his flag, and it's going to be all nice, and but this is crack up, hey?
Cool.
That's one of my favourites as well.
That's really interesting to hear all the other antics that you're doing behind the scenes, ways to increase the chance that you can get the good shot. So thanks a lot for sharing this time, looking through your photos. It's been really interesting.
That's all right.
For anyone else who's interested, you've got a lovely website that I'll link to.
I should update that.
More beautiful shots in there. Well, you've got some fresh batch. Fresh batch of photos.
I was like, my website.
Going in there. So.
No, thank you for having me, Jean. It was fun.
If you're enjoying the Perfect Flow podcast and want more value from it in the future, there are some ways you can support it. The first is to rate or leave a positive review on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or other platforms where it's available. The second is to share this podcast or specific episodes on social media or with friends. The third is to get involved more directly through the Perfect Flow page on Facebook, where I'm trying to construct a more interactive community. I want Perfect Flow to belong to the listeners, And if you tell me what topics you're most interested in, or even suggest specific guests, I'll do my best to make it happen. This is your opportunity to be part of something that answers your questions and adds value to your life. Another good reason to follow Perfect Flow on Facebook is that I post links to episodes, blog posts, and anything I find useful to this page. It's a great way to follow my training, racing, and learning. Another great way to stay engaged is to subscribe to genebeveridge.nz. This way you will get podcasts and blogs emailed to you, avoiding the clutter of Facebook. I don't know where this project will take us, but the reception so far has been positive. Who knows where we might be in a few years.